know, if you're ever looking to buy a car, it's real important you check on the numbers if you want to buy something that's worth money. But if you're going to be checking on numbers, let me warn you about something. When you have a car that has all the matching numbers, we're going to be doing a show about that in the near future. We're going to show you where to look. But what matching numbers mean is the engine, the transmission, and a lot of the engine parts in the vehicle have to match and have to be the way they were from the factory. In fact, I'm reading the literature they have on this automobile. This car here is very rare. It was one of only 3 made. It's the only one left in existence. It's very rare because everything matches in the car. But I'm going to let you out another secret. It has a 426 Hemi. This is one of the rarest automobiles of the 60s. They didn't make a lot of them, so if you can find a Hemi that you want to purchase for yourself, very, very powerful engine, very interesting concept in engines that Chrysler produced, Dodge Motor and Chrysler produced back in the 70s. But that is a car that is unbelievable. Very sought after car. I would venture to say that this thing is worth in excess of close to probably $100,000 being in the condition it's in. I stand to be corrected. The owner was walking up as I'm finishing my interview talking about $100,000. I thought that was a lot of money. Tell me what the car is. Tell me what you turned down.
I turned down $365,000 for it.
You turned down $365,000. Did you hear the story about the first cruise auction? I'm going to tell you a little story about cruise auction. Back about 30 years ago, they started this cruise auction. And the major media wrote about 2 fools meeting in a cornfield because one guy had a Duesenberg and wanted $100,000 for it. And this was in the early 70s. And another fool came out and offered him $80,000 for it. And the guy that wanted $100,000 turned him down. You were one of these fools that turned down $360,000. What do you think the car is worth?
Absolutely not.
I'm not making fun of you. I'm using a little levity here.
You just don't know any better.
Yeah, right. What do you think it's worth, really?
It's worth what anybody wants to pay for it.
Okay.
I can't even get an appraisal on it because nothing compares to it.
Okay. Now it was bought by somebody from overseas. Tell us a little story about it.
The factory ordered it. It was ordered from the factory for a gentleman in Switzerland.
Okay.
A brokerage company had it sent to him from New York. They sent it right to him. It never went into a dealer showroom or anything.
Okay. They gotta, like, if we're buying a car from Europe, sending it here, it has to meet our specifications. If we're sending something to Switzerland, it has to meet their specifications. So it would have kilometers and stuff like that on the speedometer?
Correct. There's kilometers on the speedometer. It also had different headlights and different horns, and it has to have safety glass. Now, I've replaced everything back to original.
Now, tell us something about some of the other cars you have in your collection.
Well, I have the same car, a sister car to it, that is the Pilot car, a full 46-pack convertible, 4-speed that was built, the first one, built by hand. And that's one of 7.
What makes you click with these Mopars? Why Mopar?
I grew up around the cars, and I just feel very comfortable around them. I've always liked them.
You got to be from my era, and they were screamers. I mean, back then, growing up in the 60s, going into the 70s, GM was hot, and Ford had the 390 to 426 to 429s. But these things were screamers back then, weren't they?
Oh, that's why we all got into the performance. That's what made the Mopar a Mopar. You know, and back in high school, we'd take them and we'd build them up for quarter-mile racing.
You didn't have to do much to these things to make them fast. They were fast from the factory, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
You know what? Thanks for spending some time with me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
What a gorgeous 1959 Cadillac Eldorado. Series 62. This automobile here is a gorgeous automobile. This thing here was probably the most obnoxious thing in the 50s. Cadillac really wanted to make a statement. They put a ton of chrome on it, but this was the last year of the real wing cars. And then Cadillac ended up putting the 2 bullets on the back. We used to call them bullets in the olden days. But because of this, And this being the only year they made this style, this body style with the bullets in the back, this is a very rare and sought after automobile. In fact, in the 80s, this car went from being worth maybe $10,000 to in excess of $100,000 to $200,000. Some of these cars did sell for $200,000 in the 80s. They kind of leveled off. If you ever get into a craze where a car goes up real quickly in 1 year, chances are it's going to fall just as quick. It's like the stock market. If you have one, sell it and reap from the benefits of the craze of the automobile. But if you're out looking to buy, think about what you're doing, because they're only worth, maybe a real sharp one maybe is worth $70,000 now. They've come back down. But boy, in the 80s, they were hot. 1959 Eldorado convertibles. In 1953, Chevrolet came out with the Corvette. This is not a 53, but it's a 54. The body styles were almost identical to the T. If you had a 53 out there right now, it'd probably be worth in excess of $100,000. In fact, there was so few of them made that they are worth anywhere from $100,000 to even $500,000, depending on the condition. I heard about a car that went through the auction recently that 5 people wanted to buy the car. They were all from the same town. They joined forces and bid on the car as a group. They bought it for an investment. The car in 1 year exceeded $100,000 in value. They made $100,000 in 1 year, but they don't want to sell it. The car will be worth that kind of money. The 54 was also a beautiful automobile. But you know what's really interesting? Back in 53 and 54, these cars came through with 6-cylinder motors and no power steering. What we have here is a 1987 Porsche Modine convertible. This is very rare. Porsche only made 2 of these cars in 1987. You know, it's really something. If you look into the history of the automobile, Porsche did a lot of takeoffs where they only made 2 or 3 cars, 4 or 5 cars. Like this one here, it's a beautiful body style. In fact, if you look close at this automobile, you'll see a lot of the body styles that you're seeing today in 1999, and you know where they came from. They were copied off of gorgeous automobiles like this, made in the 80s by Porsche. The interest generated by some of these automobiles is unbelievable. I cannot get close enough with my camera without having 10 to 20 people around this automobile at all times. And the reason for it is, it's the old Batmobile. Well, folks, to the Bat Cave, and off we go. This 1993 Corvette convertible was owned by one of the rock stars, Greg Allman from the Allman Brothers. What a gorgeous automobile. You know what, we'll talk a little bit about when you have a lot of money and what you could dress up your vehicle with. You can actually take your wheels off and have them chrome plated. What an expensive trip to take your car through. They actually gold plated the door handles on the car and all the Corvette insignias. This car should be bringing a very handsome dollar today at the celebrity auction. This is a 1967 Austin Healey 3000 BJ8. This car was totally restored. It took a period of 3 years from 1992 to 1995. They have a whole portfolio showing the restorations, all done in pictures. It has the 72 spoked chrome wheels, a tonneau cover, painted from the bare metal to a lustful, tasteful white and red metallic. There's no way you can cover a car show without seeing a 1958 Chevrolet Impala. This is one of the most gorgeous automobiles Chevrolet made. In fact, in 1958, Chevrolet made a complete changeover and a fashion statement. This is the first year that Chevrolet came out with Impala, which was very, very unique. A concept that still lasts to today in the 1990s going into the millennium. The first year of dual headlights. Before this automobile was made, cars did not have dual headlights. They had one big seal beam with the bright inside that. This car was rare because it had even the exhaust coming out the left, the rear quarter panels. This was the first year that Chevrolet came out with an engine called a 348. It was available with 4-barrel carburetor. They put 3 deuces on them, and if you have one out there that has fuel injection, it is extremely rare and worth probably double the money. As I was growing up, I always loved this car, and I always knew it would go and become something, worth something. 10 years ago, this vehicle might have been worth $15,000, maybe $10,000, depending on the market. Today, because of it being a 1-year car, this is the only year they made this body style, and the 57s are getting to be so unique and rare, this thing is probably worth in the vicinity of about $50,000. If you have that one out there with fuel injection, you're probably looking at $75,000. Amazing. Here at the cruise auction, we find a Chris Craft, a wooden hull boat. I don't know a lot about boats. All I can tell you is I love them. I love looking at them. But I know one thing, that these old wooden boats are very sought after. A lot of collectors collect them. In fact, I watched one of the shows on television about wooden boats, and a boat like this, I'm not saying this boat here, but a boat this size from, let's say, the 40s or the 50s in wood can actually bring $200,000 to $300,000 totally restored. Could cost in excess of $100,000 to restore something like this. But it's really nice to see something this pretty. It's a 1975, a wooden hull Chris Craft here at the Cruise International Auction in Auburn, Indiana on the Labor Day weekend. This little red wagon by Dodge looks like it's probably out of the 80s. I would venture to say it's out of the 80s, maybe the 70s. But I remember back in the 60s they had a truck that was famous by Dodge. It was called the Little Red Wagon. In fact, Mr. Norms was the big high-performance dealer in the Chicagoland area, and he had a lot of these Little Red Wagons that pulled out of there, and they were power-packed with anything from a 440 6-pack to a Hemi. Unbelievable what you'll find here at the Cruise International Auction. It's amazing what people do with beautiful automobiles. This is a 1947 Lincoln convertible, but was turned into a street rod. This car is very desirable in perfect condition or even needing restoration. But as you can see, this car was completely gone through, turned into a street rod. We got Lakers coming out the sides. We got the top chopped. We have a Chevrolet 454 with a 400 trans in here, a Camaro front and rear leather interior, Blaupunkt stereo, radar detectors front and rear, remote control doors because you don't see any door handles on here, power windows, cruise control, and a lot of other things on this gorgeous 1947 Lincoln street rod. It's amazing. I can tell you all kinds of stories, and stories you probably have heard or whatever. I know people that had scooters and motorcycles like this in their garages in the 60s and actually ended up throwing them away. I remember having one myself that I ended up giving away because I never thought it'd be worth anything. Some of these scooters that you see here are so unique, so rare, only a few made, but the amazing thing is they became collectibles. People love them. And you know what's interesting? I got to tell you something out there, folks. If you have one, it doesn't have to be mint. It doesn't have to be showroom condition. Some of these things sell for more if you leave them alone and they've got the rust on them and they're a little pitted and things on that order. So it's amazing what you might have in your garage and what it's worth. When I was going to high school, one of the guys had a Fiat. It wasn't as nice as this one. We used to call it the Fifi. But this is a 61 Fiat 500 Holly. It's a 4-cylinder. This is a really interesting automobile. They made these for people that lived in like resorts to go get their mail in the front of their property. They would drive these. A lot of real wealthy people that had ships, vessels, ocean liners, the very, very wealthy, had these on the ships, so when they would pull into port, they would be able to drive this automobile around town. We're talking Monte Carlo, places on that order. But this would be a real fun vehicle to drive. You go do your thing. Has the wicker interior, little Fiat 4-cylinder, doesn't weigh much. 4 guys can actually pick this car up without a doubt. Real interesting, real cute car. You know, the auto industry was real innovative years ago, and I hope we get back into that. We're seeing a lot more of creativity and a lot more muscle into the cars and stuff, but I like this cute design also. I'm sure you enjoy it too. This is a gorgeous 1931 Cadillac Fleetwood Roadster. This car is very unique, but before I tell you about why it's so unique, let me just tell you a little bit about the 30s. These automobiles were painted this color from the factory. A lot of the manufacturers before then, before the Great Crash, only had black cars. That was the big thing, dark black or maroon or dark blue. They didn't go with this flashy color. In the 30s, most of these manufacturers actually took older cars, refinished them into something like that because the public wanted it. Now let me tell you about why this one is so rare. It was one of 20 cars made. That's right, folks. GM only made 20 of these cars back in 1931. This was the 9th one that was made, and it was made specially for Jean Harlow. She picked this color combination. It's amazing about seeing the cars and the interest in the automobiles, but you know what's really amazing? We have so many places that have email addresses. This place here, it's www.ragtopmotors.com. Unbelievable. Look at these gorgeous convertibles. Boy, this is a business I'd love to own. Boy, when I got out of the body shop, I should have went into something like this. Selling gorgeous pieces of history, convertibles. Aren't they wonderful, folks? It's nothing finer than to get into a convertible in the summertime and just cruise the streets. But the email addresses, the computers today, it's amazing what is happening in this industry. In fact, our show is going to be getting an email address shortly. It is Monday, Labor Day, and we are covering celebrity cars. And I'll tell you, every time I go down another aisle, here's another celebrity car. Here we have Evel Knievel's car. It's a 1974 Stutz Bearcat. This automobile was used in a lot of the movies featuring Evel Knievel. In fact, it has an interesting history where if you buy this car this weekend, folks, you get Evel Knievel's jacket, and they have a full video presentation of everything that this car has been involved in. But another part, this car was bought for a promotional deal in 1974 to get attention for Evel Knievel when he was going to jump the Grand Canyon. And it is a beautiful car, and we could see why it would get a lot of attention, folks. You know, I haven't seen too many of these, but these are really, really neat automobiles. I remember when they came out in the 70s. This is a 1981 Excalibur. It's a custom Phaeton. It's a beautiful car. These were built with a Chevy V8 engine drivetrain, They have power steering, power brakes, 3-speed automatic, 400 transmission. They come with air conditioning. The newer ones, the ones out of the 80s and 90s, they have rolled up windows. The older ones had like plastic clip-in windows. But they are really gorgeous automobiles, and I'll bet you they're fun to drive. We've shown you a lot of beautiful automobiles. This car looks nice, but it's in dire need of total restoration. It's a 1948 Daimler 4-door limousine. It was used in the royal family's trip to South Africa. A great road car, high-speed, 9-passenger, one of 2 built. It's very rare, very unique, but probably needing something like $100,000 to $150,000 worth of restoration. Here we have a 1964 Pontiac Bonneville. The body lines on this, they're talking about aerodynamics cars nowadays, but if you take a good look at this automobile, the body lines are all rounded, smooth, sleek. We used to call these the old boats, the old sleds. The Cruisers. There was a lot of nicknames when I was growing up. In fact, I had one of these, except it was in blue. Mine was very rare, and I should have kept it because it'd probably be worth a lot of money now. I had a 64 Pontiac Bonneville with a 389 and 3 deuces on it. What a magnificent automobile. And I'll tell you what, all 3 deuces worked really well. Folks, believe it or not, we've come into a real rare automobile. I've been trying to film this for 2 days now. It's a 1953 Nash. It's extremely rare. We're trying to get our camera in here, but there is so many collectors and automobile enthusiasts that keep looking at this car every time we get close to it. I can't even get my camera in there. We are going to have some serious car collectors looking at this gorgeous 1953 Nash. This car here has a lot of interesting features. In fact, let me talk about what somebody did here. This is a 1951 Kaiser. It was a 4-door. It had a higher roof line. They ended up chopping it. They call it a chop top. They take about 9 inches out of the roof and the posts. They took the back doors and welded them shut. They actually did a lot of custom work to an automobile like this. Folks, this car is worth a lot of money. A Kaiser is a very sought-after automobile. A lot of people still want them. But the guy that customized this car probably did it somewhere probably 20 years ago or better, and he wanted something to look like a car from the James Dean era. So this car was customized and probably put together to make it look like something out of the 50s and the Rebel Without a Cause, James Dean. I keep moving back toward these big old lead sleds. I love these cars. It's unbelievable. This automobile struck my eye right away. I'm not really fond of yellow or cream color, but put it on the right automobile and it looks wonderful. This automobile here was restored professionally a long time ago. Since then, it has gone through 3 major national shows and has won first place in every show. And it is available and it is for sale here at Cruise International Car Show and Auction. Let me tell you another thing that kind of drew me toward this car. If you ever watched the movie The Godfather, Sonny rode in a car just like this when he went through that toll booth. You ever wonder if he had the correct change, he might have not had met his end? Taught me a lesson. I always keep changing my car when I go through those toll booths. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. We're back in Chicago. What a wonderful show it was. I tell you, I had the time of my life. Just when you think you've seen everything in the auto industry, you end up seeing something that you haven't seen. Through the power of television, I can also show you what I see. And I get a kick out of doing it. I really enjoy going out and producing shows like we did today. Let me tell you a little bit about this cruise event that we went to over the Labor Day holiday weekend. It's been going on for 29 years. The Cruz family put it on to raise money to rebuild the Auburn Cordon Duesenberg Museum. I'll tell you, if you ever get an opportunity to have fun, you automotive kickers out there, you weekend warriors in the garage, you wrenchers, you want to go out and see something spectacular, check out Cruz Auto Auction and Swap Meet. They have like 500 acres of cars and parts. In fact, let me tell you one other thing. You know, I'm here from Chicago, the Midwest. It's one of the top cities in the nation. And I never thought that you could see something like this in a farming community of Indiana. I mean, it was just spectacular. Every time I turned a corner, I was like a little kid in Toys R Us, because it was just fascinating. I didn't want to leave. In fact, I stayed an extra day. Hope you enjoyed today's program, but keeping up with the new concept of the way we're shooting the shows and bringing things to you, we learned something. I did anyway in today's program. I took the Michael Jordan limo that we've done 30 shows on. We've rebuilt it on the air. In fact, it went through the celebrity auction. And I didn't sell it. I brought it back. So tune in. You'll be seeing it some more on our show, How To With Your Automobile. We're going to be doing some interesting spots with it. But the thing that I learned that I want to bring to you is that if you ever take an automobile to an auction, find out what it's worth. And this is the best tip of the show we did today. Make sure you put a reserve on the car. This means that they cannot sell the car if it doesn't bring X amount of dollars. You never know. Something can happen like happened to me over this weekend. Was they were running real hot Saturday and Sunday and buying 96% of the automobiles going through the chutes. And I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think I saw one car bring over $2 million at this show. If you don't have a reserve on the automobile and nobody's bidding, it could go for literally next to nothing. That's another interesting point, because Saturday at this auction is a no reserve day, and you can buy automobiles very reasonably. You'll be seeing the Michael Jordan limo. We've got it back here. I'm back in Chicago. We're going to bring a lot more shows to you this year. In fact, we're working on some real interesting concepts. In fact, we have a half a dozen shows right now in the can, ready to be edited. I have to do some inserts and stuff like that, but you're going to find them real interesting. And I've got a challenge for the auto industry. Tell us about people that rip people off. I've written a letter, and I'm trying to bring it toward the news media, the code of silence. I'm breaking the code of silence. You all know that already by watching my show, because you've learned an awful lot. The auto industry is so afraid of teaching you something that they would rather hide and run away from us. The non-reputable shops. The reputable shops, they don't have a problem with it. But the non-reputable shops do have a problem with it. But we're going to expose them this year in the program, How To With Your Automobile. I'm Rich Satkowski, and I'd like to thank you for watching. Funding provided in part by Belmont Colmar Towing, Chicago and suburbs. Funding provided in part by Elmhurst Kia on Grand Avenue in Elmhurst, Illinois. With those important show topics, dial 630-595-6533.